Well, Peace Arch Hospital's maternity ward is closed again today. The temporary closure is set to last through Monday, and patients in labor will be diverted to other hospitals. Now, this is the fourth diversion since November at the White Rock Hospital, and the Ridge Meadows maternity ward is also closed for a few days, or was closed for a few days over the holidays. And some doctors in BC say these diversions at small hospitals are signs of a looming crisis in provincial maternity care. Well, for more on this, we're joined by Dr. Chelsea Elwood, the Vice President of the Society of Obstetricians and Gynecologists of British Columbia. Good morning to you, Dr. Elwood.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Thanks for being with us. Fraser Health says this diversion at Peace Arch, these diversions are routine in the face of staffing challenges, especially around the holidays. How sustainable are these as short-term solutions?
Yeah, no, do we have the ability to reroute patients so that we ensure that there is care present? Yes, actually, we do. That's called the Provincial Maternity Network. As far as being routine, I think we're seeing an unprecedented number of closures of small sites across the province of BC. We heard earlier in the year from sites like Vernon, Kamloops, Prince George, Terrace, Ridge Meadows, Peace Arch, like the numbers are starting to add up. And this is a conversation we've been having with the government for a number of years now about the fact that there is a maternity crisis. I think we're past looming and now we're into a maternity crisis in BC in order to ensure that people can safely have a baby.
And you yourself are currently deployed to Williams Lake to cover a staffing gap in their maternity ward. What does that tell us about just how widespread this problem is?
Yeah, I think it sort of exemplifies that it's pretty significant. And I think deployed is maybe not quite the word. We're not the military. You can't send us wherever you want. But we do have the ability, if we have capacity, to be able to, fill in sites. But the reality is the shortages are so significant across the province, there really isn't an ability to do that consistently. I come to Williams Lake because I really enjoy it here,
Hmm.
and I get to fill a space, and we keep a maternity ward open. And Williams Lake particularly serves quite a large portion of the province, from the west coast all the way across. But it's not sort of a realistic long-term solution for maternity care in the province of BC.
Right. And so why is it so hard to hire and retain OBGYNs in this province?
Yeah, so the care in the province of BC really has evolved over time, and the way the system was set up sort of in the 80s and the 90s for a certain style of practice and a certain style of care. And what we know about maternity care in the province of BC is that it has changed, and that from a pregnant person's perspective, they're older, they come in with more medical conditions, their pregnancies are more complex, and they actually require more involvement with OBGYNs than we have seen in the past. So the demand for our services has increased over time, such that between about 50 and 85% of all pregnancies in BC will have hands on by an obstetrician at some point in time in order to deliver a baby safely. And so the system has not kept up with the demands on our specialty.
Hmm. Yeah, we spoke recently with interim BC Conservative leader Trevor Halford. Again, he used the word looming as well, saying this is a looming crisis. You say it's already a crisis, and that doctors have been warning of it for some time. What does the future look like in 10 years if BC is not able to staff maternity wards reliably?
Yeah, I think we say not looming because I think when you have, a half dozen sites that are consistently on
Right.
closure or diversion, to us, that's not looming. That's we're in it. And the maternity network in BC relies on OBGYNs and people to transfer patients between sites, but that's not good care. People should be able to deliver in their home sites. We have been warning about it. So we had sat down with the previous government, and had a really positive, thoughtful conversation about sort of the workforce demands, the looming shortage of staff for OBGYNs, and thought we had gotten to a place where we had an agreement where we would take kind of a bit of a provincial approach to be able to close this gap and recruit and retain. I can tell you that we did a workforce survey amongst OBGYNs in the province of BC, and about 50% of the sites in the next 3 to 5 years will be short staffed. So we can shorten that time frame you gave me of 10 years down to 5, and we would expect that more than half of the sites in BC will have staffing shortages. And we needed to do something about that. And the doing something about that involves different conversations about how we approach care, but also different conversations about how we recruit and we retain.
Right. And retention, speaking of retention, in October 7, OBGYNs resigned from a Kamloops hospital citing extreme burnout. The health minister promised them then that there would be a transition plan and that they would be boosting recruitment efforts. What has happened since then?
Yeah, so I can't speak to Kamloops specifically, and you would need to chat with the Kamloops team there in order to be able to sort of clarify where they're at. But I can tell you that the reason that we burn out as OBGYNs is it's a lot of hard work. Okay. So, as OBGYNs, if you think of maternity care, there are really three groups of providers who support pregnant people. There are midwives, there are family docs, and there are us. And it's kind of like a three-legged stool. If you bolster two of them and you forget the one of them, the stool is going to fall over. It's not going to work. And what's happening right now is that OBGYN group is not being supported in the way that it needs to continue the work. We work 24/7 every single day. And as we all know, if we've all had family who's had babies, most babies are born at 3 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the morning. And so we
Uh-huh.
spend our entire careers, literally 40 years, up at 3 o'clock in the morning doing high risk, high acuity, high stakes medicine
Yeah.
and high stakes surgery. We also pay the most, malpractice insurance. We have the most, complex practices around those kind of things. And so it's a very stressful job. And in order to keep us in that job, A, we love what we do. We absolutely do. You never meet an OBGYN trainee who doesn't love what they do, but you have to make it reasonable and feasible. And that involves a job that we can do, that we're not short staffed for, and that we're adequately compensated for, because otherwise we're going to move to day practice. We're going to move out of doing the night work. There's no point in doing that if it's not appropriately supported. And that's where you lead to these types of crises. And then it's very difficult for me to say to a trainee, come on down, do what I do. I love what I do. You love what you do, but you're going to spend the next 40 years undervalued.
Hmm.
Come on down, do this job. Who's going to sign up for that realistically, right? They're going to think about different options. They're going to think about fellowships. And so that's part of the recruitment and retention thing, is to maintain people to be able to willing to be up at 3 o'clock in the morning.
And so then what needs to be done when it comes to compensation then? What needs to change when we talk about how OBGYNs are compensated?
Yeah, so it's not actually just a conversation about compensation, but I'm just going to walk you through a tiny bit of history because it's important to understand this. So, the way the system was set up was for like in the 90s, and it's compensated piecemeal. But now that the focus is, and appropriately so, on what we call low risk care, but the average pregnancy being cared for by a family doctor and a midwife who provide
Hmm.
excellent comprehensive care, and we provide a much more supportive role. The structure of how that works needs to change, and it hasn't. Because again, remember, 50 to 85% of all pregnancies, even low risk ones, will have hands on by an obstetrician. They become high risk enough at some point in time that they are seen by us. And so we need to change the approach to which we support and compensate, but also the way we contract and all those kind of things for
Hmm.
OBGYN care, such that it looks like something very different. And we had proposed to the province that we actually take a provincial approach to this, because you have different types of sites across the province of BC. So you have a small site, like I'm currently in at Williams Lake, which um, has a lower volume and a lower sort of acuity of what we can deliver here in Williams Lake. But then I also work in Vancouver, which is a very high acuity quaternary center. And those need to be looked at slightly differently.
Right.
But what we need to not do is create a have and have not situation where small sites aren't adequately supported and large sites are, or large sites are inadequately supported and small sites are.
Hmm.
And the devil's in the details about how you set up those contracts and what are the job descriptions for those contracts and how they are sort of created. But it needs to be really done from a thoughtful provincial lens.
Dr. Elwood, so good to hear you this morning. Thank you so much. And we'll stay in touch and see where this goes.
Thanks for having me. Always happy to come back.
Appreciate your time. Thank you. That's Dr. Chelsea Elwood, Vice President of the Society of Obstetricians and Gynecologists of British Columbia.